Good afternoon, all. Myself, Pallavi Singh, Associate Fellow TERI, welcome all the participants and experts in the webinar on achieving sustainable waste management, circular economy approach. As you know, Mission Life is India's global initiative to combat climate change and promote sustainable living to achieve the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. In this regard, TERI is organizing this webinar that emphasizes the benefits of waste. Circular economy aims to eliminate all forms of junk from the market, where junk refers to any inefficient utilization of resources or assets. So now, in this regard, I would like to invite Ms. Reeta Sharma to welcome our participants and experts. Ms. Reeta Sharma is noted knowledge management research professional who develops and implements knowledge management practices and capacity building entrepreneurship program in TERI and for outside clients. She has over decades of experience executing new and unique challenges projects at TERI. Currently, she is involved with TERI EICP Center, where she is responsible for developing knowledge products and organizing capacity building and awareness program for various stakeholders. Over to you, Ms. Rita.
Thank you, Pallavi, for this introduction. And hello and very good afternoon to everyone. And as a coordinator of this webinar, I extend my warm welcome to all of you for joining today's webinar on achieving sustainable waste management through circular economic approach, which TERI EIACP Center is organizing as part of its goal to support SDGs under Mission Life. And I believe that topic chosen is the need of the hour, as managing waste generated in any form, whether it is e-waste, solid waste, plastic waste, hospital waste, is one of the important issue in this fast growing urban world, and its impact on environment pose unprecedented challenges. But if managed properly, it could offer opportunities for job creation as well as cleaner environment for all. And this can be achieved through circular economy model, which employs not only waste management but reuse, recycling, and responsible manufacture could support the development of new industries and job, reducing emissions and increasing efficient use of natural resources. And on the other hand, digitization is affecting every area of our daily life, including the environmental technological sector also. And the widespread use of digital technologies which enable smarter waste management in many countries, such as artificial intelligence, robotic, the Internet of Things, or blockchain ensures the recyclability and traceability of waste from collection to treatment, allowing waste management to be 100% digitized. And this is how digitization is currently leading towards a new management model more aimed at the circular economy, which makes all stages of the process more efficient in terms of collection, classification, and treatment of waste. And through this webinar, we aimed to deliberate on the challenges, issues, and the possible solutions for managing waste and achieving economic benefits, and how Mission Life seeks to translate the vision of life into measurable impact. And for this, we have our distinguished panel of speakers in this webinar, Dr. PK Bhattacharya, Mr. Souvik Bhattacharya, and Mr. Saurabh Manuja, who will more elaborate in this on these topics in the subsequent sessions. So with this, I welcome you all once again in this webinar, and looking forward to listen from our esteemed speakers. So thank you, and over to you, Pallavi.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Rita. So now this is a time to give a short overview about Mission Life. For this, I would like to invite Dr. PK Bhattacharya, Senior Fellow and Associate Director at Knowledge Management Division, TERI. He supervises and manages knowledge management and user-centric services in TERI. He specialized in project planning and implementation, knowledge processing, organizing and analysis, editorial activities, and knowledge service innovation. He also functions as coordinator and head of EICP Center on Renewable Energy and Climate Change, which is funded by MOEFCC. He prepares several subject-specific reports and undertakes several implementation projects, capacity development programs, and also implemented community-driven environment awareness projects. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Pallavi, and thank you, Rita, for arranging this event, which is very important in today's context. And I'm sure that our all, esteemed speakers will talk much on the how and which way we can achieve the sustainable waste management, where waste could be recycled and reused in our economic for our economic benefits. Now, my topic today is to give you a brief overview of how waste is connected in the mission life aspiration at all, or as a individual or as an organization in TERI, we believe that sustainable development is the key, and in line with the Indian announcement that the country will reach net zero by 2070. And in fact, many other nations have also committed their aspirations to reach the goal sooner or later. Now, where do we stand today, and how, as an individual, we can contribute to our national aspirations? Now, that is what is the in the topic today. And Mission Life is a movement that Indian government has dreamed, and they expect that every citizen of India would be pro-planet people sooner or later, so that collectively we can achieve sustainable growth in India. Now, where do we stand today? If we see that recently the Guardian newspaper, they have reported that the world is on track of 2.7 degrees Celsius on heating, which means that about 2 billion people will experiencing nearly 29 degree above heat by 2030. Up to 1 billion people might be displaced or migrated to a cooler places. And by 2050, there will be additional 2 billion people on this planet, which will, put lot of more pressure, so that we have to utilize our resources, and they will be also utilizing the global resources. So that's the reason we have to be little conscious and little understanding of our planet's resources, what we can use affluently or what we can use rather conservatively or consciously. Now, back home in India, why we are actually, seeing the carbon dioxide emissions is a important component here, because urgent action, if not taken, so that you can understand, it's more than 2 billion people are going to be hit in next in maybe 20 to 30 years time. In India, what we have seen that in 2021, as per 2021 emissions report, that 2.7 billion tons carbon dioxides are getting emitted, which is of course at a higher rate, but government has taken several steps to bring down the and the schemes also to bring down this rate to a comparatively lower limit. However, despite India's relatively higher emission growth rate, the country's per capita emission is relatively low. Now, when we see that how these things are coming up, nearly 90% of carbon dioxides are emitted by different industries, and that's why it's necessary that how sustainable growth is important for Indian context. But if we practice environmental friendly lifestyle, that's what government is actually trying to push through Mission Life, so we can save up to 20% of emissions. Now, when we see that how we can probably reduce carbon dioxide, one, we can all know that we can increase the carbon sink, we can deploy different type of RE technologies and move towards low carbon economy. Of course, we can manage waste and bring them back to economy after recycling and other, and make them reusable, so that many of the, waste emission, what is happening today, could be reduced. Considering all these things, Mission Life has 7 major themes: how energy can be saved and what energy saved can be practiced by our citizens; water, how it can be saved; single-use plastic reduction; sustainable food systems adopted by individuals; waste reduced; health, lifestyle adopted, and e-waste reduced. These 7 themes are considered, if people are practicing this, so they are, called the pro-planet people. That's how MissionLiFE has been, conceptualized. Now, today's topic is that how waste can be, bring back to the through circular economic approach. So why it is necessary? Because nearly 15% of our emissions are from waste, and it serves, if we can manage them well, it not only reduce the disposal cost, but as well as procurement also gets reduced. Now, let me share with you some of the data what I could gather, that 1 kg of non-recycled waste generates nearly 70 grams of carbon dioxide. For every kg of food waste, nearly 2.5 kg of carbon dioxide is emitted. And when this food is ends in the landfill, it generates methane, and which is nearly 25 times more harmful than the carbon dioxide. So that's the issue there. For every kilogram of food fossil plastic produced, there is nearly 1.7 to 3.5 kg of carbon dioxide get released. Now there are n number of such type of data are available, but for every kg of plastics burned, 2.9 kg of carbon dioxide get emitted. Now, that all shows that waste reduction and waste utilization or recycling through some sustainable means is a necessity of today's, today's hour. Now, when MissionLiFE conceptualized the waste reduced theme, so it actually, wanted that whether our, people, I'm sure many of you must be practicing all this. So how they can, in the rural setup, contribute to cattle waste, food waste, agricultural waste to biogas plant. So there are government scheme like Govardhan is available there. Use agricultural residue, animal waste for composting or manure preparation or maybe mulching. Recycle and reuse old newspapers, magazines, feed unused and uncooked vegetables left over to cattle. Even in our daily life, daily routine life in urban, space, we can, set our printer default to double side printing so that paper consumption is reduced. Repair, reuse, and recycle old furnitures, our household electronic items. Buy paper produce made from different recycled paper. You donate your clothes and books. You do not discard your waste in the local, water bodies or near to that, because that seeps into, or the seepage happens to the local bodies which pollutes water. Do not let people defecate, in public, places. Now, besides this, one major emphasis should be given on how we can segregate waste at every level. Every level means when it goes to recycling, to industries, as well as between dry and wet waste in our homes. So several techniques are available. This is necessary because nearly 62 million tons of municipal solid waste are getting generated from Indian towns. Waste generation refers to practice of separating waste, wet waste, as well as dry waste. So this segregation makes the task of recyclers even easier. So wet waste in all kitchen waste that we produce includes vegetables and peels, used tea, fruits, etc. So all these could be used for your biodegradable, consider as biodegradable waste and can easily be composed. Now, all these practices, if we can do, so this actually, we are leveraging our in organizations, our nation's dream to reach out up to the reach to net zero by 2070, and we can also make contribution as an individual to MissionLiFE initiative. So I'll stop here, and I'll expect that our esteemed speakers will touch upon these points and take this discussion further to a meaningful way so that our present participants can learn more on how exactly waste can be minimized. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for giving us such an informative overview about Mission Life. So now it's time for the next session, which is on how sustainable waste management can be achieved by promoting a circular economy. For this, I would like to invite Mr. Shovik Bhattacharya, Associate Director, Integrated Policy Analysis, TERI. Mr. Shovik has more than 15 years of experience in energy and environmental research and management consulting. His areas of work include resource efficiency and circular economy, developing policies and strategies along product and service value chains for promoting 6 R's: industrial ecology, material demand, supply assessment, material flow analysis, life cycle cost analysis, impact assessments. So, over to you, Mr. Bhattacharya. Thank you. Thank you very much for being with us.
Yeah. Thanks, Pallavi. Am I audible?
Yes, yes, you're audible.
So the topic is so unique and yet so openly discussed these days after the announcement of the Sustainable Development Goals, the 2030 Development Agenda, and there are a lot of literature, a lot of work being done around integrating the aspect of waste management and circularity. Well, waste management is something which we have been looking at or promoting through various policies, programs, initiatives. But the circularity aspects have actually given a very interesting dimension to the entire deliberations on the waste management. So what today I have decided is that I prepared a short deck. Rita, I believe you have the presentation with you. Will it be possible for you to?
Yes, I have. Just a minute.
So, well, obviously, given the paucity of time, it would be extremely difficult to cover all the nuanced aspects of waste management and circularity. So, what I have done is I have taken plastics largely because we are moving towards the plastics treaty, which possibly would be taken up during the upcoming United Nations Environment Assembly. Um, the upcoming World Environment Day would also be uh, observing the this year's edition by reducing plastics waste and plastic pollution, and also the fact that at TERI we have been working on a very interesting project looking at how we can what are the issues along the entire plastics production consumption value chain, and what had been covered till date but what are still not addressed appropriately. So we are preparing a kind of a roadmap on those lines, and in that roadmap, in fact, covers over a period of like 20 from now till 2035, and it presents some of the key actionable items that will really help plastics move from its current more on a linear model, although we have seen a lot of circularity being practiced these days. But yes, we have to like really leapfrog to ensure that we are able to adopt complete circularity in the coming decade and a half. So with that background, I'm going to start with my presentation. So as the title of the presentation suggests, towards plastic waste management in India, the circular economy waste. So can you just go to the next slide? Yeah. So plastic, one of the greatest inventions, I would say, of the 20th century, is now seemingly indispensable. And its lifestyle and economic benefits, however, has come at a steep cost, making it also one of the greatest challenges of the 21st century. So, if we look at the plastic consumption over the last few decades, it has quadrupled and driven by the growth largely in the emerging markets and largely in Asia. And if we look at the total global plastics production between the last 2 decades, that is between 2000 and 2020, it has reached almost like 400 million tons. And it is said that what had been produced right from the beginning till date, 50% of that has been actually produced over the last 2 decades. And But at the same time, while in one aspect it is regarding the waste or the generation part, but there are also issues associated with the emissions in converting the crudes to plastics and other critical polymers. um, Almost half of the plastic waste is currently generated in OECD countries, as per the recent OECD Plastics Outlook. And obviously, because of the level of economic development, the average or the per capita consumption of plastics in those countries are ranging between 150 to 250 kilograms. In the United States, for example, it is estimated somewhere around 220 kilograms. In the European Union, it is somewhere between 110 to 120 grams. But on an average, the estimates for countries like Japan and Korea, South Korea, so it's much lower than what we see in that part of the world. Uh, so what we see is the problem not largely because of the production, but what largely is arising from the plastic pollution, and which is largely arising because of the improper practices leading to a lot of mismanagement and leakages into the disposal into the environment. So we do have the larger debris of the plastics, which we call it a macroplastics. And we also have the microplastics, which like are much smaller than 5 millimeter in diameter, which has a significant impact, largely because of its long-lived nature and going into the human systems and living organisms. So nearly two-thirds of this plastic waste comes from plastics which have been like kind of lived with lifetimes under 5 years, and almost 40% coming from the packaging and 12% from the consumer goods, and the remaining 11% from clothing and textiles. Although I'll come to those numbers and estimates in the Indian context. But just to give a kind of a context setting, I think what are the contributors from the or from which sectors these kind of plastics waste emanate. In terms of the recycling, it is still at a global level very low compared to the volume of waste being generated. So it says that only 9% of the plastic waste is recycled, and more than 50% ends up in landfills, and in fact 22% evades even waste management system, um, goes into the uncontrolled dump sites, which call it. Yeah. So yeah, I'm just onto the global slide, so I haven't actually gone into the India specific slide, so you can just retain on the first slide. Yeah. So Rita, you can just go to the previous slide. So plastic pollution can in fact alter the habitats and natural processes, reducing ecosystems' ability to adapt and to climate change, directly affecting millions of people's livelihoods, food production capabilities, and social well-being. And of late, we are also talking about leakages of plastics into the ocean systems, which in fact compromises the entire health of the ocean ecosystems. Next slide, please. So as we discussed about the importance of plastics at the global level, so India definitely is a part of that ecosystem, and the consumption of plastics have also increased significantly in the country as well. If we look at the consumption between 2011 and 2019, this is an apparent consumption which we call as when we take into consideration both the domestic production and imports and excluding exports. So this has in fact increased from almost 9.5 million tons in 2011-12 to almost 16 million tons with an estimated compound annual growth rate of 6.3%. So you can see that the major polymers, so we have kind of tracked in this particular slide about how it has grown, and these are the different type of polymers that are produced in the country, including major polymers. Obviously, there are a lot of other polymers which are used, but these actually contribute to a significant share of the total polymers produced in the country. So you can see the major polymers include the polypropylene, which is around 28%, polyethylene 29%, the polyvinyl chloride, commonly known as the PVC, 17%, and the polyethylene terephthalate, the PET, which is around 5%. And the per capita plastic consumption, however, is very low given the sheer population of the country. So we see that the total production wise it might be quite huge, but given the population, the per capita consumption is low. So this was estimated that in 2010 the per capita consumption was around 8 kilogram, and it expected to reach to around 29 kilogram by the year 2019-2020. So sorry, 2035. So at this rate, the total plastic consumption in India will grow from almost 9.9 million ton during the early part of the last decade to almost 44 million tons by 2025. And this is predicted the growth rate of around 255% over the 25 years period. Yeah, next slide, please. Now, if we look at the share of polymers consumed in different sectors, include the flexible packaging, rigid packaging, the household sector, the building and the construction, agricultural sector, electrical and electronics, automotive, and others, which has a very low value. The share of polymers, in fact, consumed in these different end-use sectors products suggests that the packaging sector, taking into consideration both flexible and rigid packaging, constitutes around 59%, followed by the building and construction 17%, and around 13% and 9% respectively. So packaging, as I mentioned, largely because of the newer form of packaging which has risen in recent times, the flexible packaging has become a very common type of material application of plastics across various end users, and it includes like pouches, milk, particularly milk pouches, bags, laminated tubes, even squeezable bottles. So they are all classical examples of flexible packaging material. No previous slide, please. Yeah. And so some of the sectors have witnessed substantial increase in the share between 2013-14 and 2019. So if you look at the share of flexible packaging, it increased from 35% to 42%. And in the rigid packaging space, it has increased from 13% to 17%. So more or less, we see a kind of a increase in almost all the sectors, while in the electrical and electronic space, we see a decline, largely because of the fact that the volume of share, or the share of plastics used in the flexible and the packaging has been quite enormous, and in the others and the electrical and electronic segment, it is kind of fallen to some extent. Yeah, next slide, please. Well, I must share with you that this is something which is not uniform in the sense that it is based on certain review of literature and interaction with certain experts to that, because these are not like kind of available estimates, but more from arrive that was estimated based on interaction with the different type of stakeholders and selected literature review. So within each sector, there are various type of polymers which are used to make different kind of products, including combination of polymers at times to make a specific product in the relevant sector. So this is the table that presents the distribution of major polymers to the end use sectors. Again, we have the same type of sectors as was presented in the previous slide, but here we have mapped that one with the relevant and important polymers. So the plastic packaging again is kind of dominated by the polyethylene and polypropylene, which you know as called as the polyfins, and is predominantly a single-use application. And it is assumed to be like kind of disposed within the same year itself, compared to the rigid and other kind of application where the disposal happens maybe not within the same year, but definitely shorter than some of the long-lived plastics. So given its short life use, its short life and its ubiquitous presence, the sector in fact generates significant amount of waste, particularly the polyethylene and the polypropylene. So from the flexible packaging, we know that PE and PP would be having the largest share. So in the market, in the segment for the household products, which largely like kind of include kitchenware, even toys and personal healthcare items, even footwear and luggages. So they are having a kind of an application of different kind of plastics, as can be seen between PE, PP, PVC, polystyrene, and PET and BioPET. So in the building and the construction sector, the plastic composition is quite unclear, although we have tried to kind of distribute and see to what extent at least some of the major plastics are kind of used. So largely we see is that the PVC is the largest user of the PVC. The building construction uses to a significant extent the PVC, although these numbers might change in recent years with a different kind of applications coming in, particularly in the high density piping and other related infrastructure. So, and finally, we do have the application in electrical and electronics, agriculture and automotive. While in the electrical systems, we see polypropylene having an almost share of around 54%. In the agriculture, in polyethylene, which has almost a share of 73%. And finally, in the automotive, because of upholstery and related application, we see PP to be having a share of around 63%. Yeah, next slide, please. So now, although like in the previous slides, we have presented the different kind of sectors and the different kind of polymers which are used across different type of sectors, we kind of wanted to see that how this the kind of different type of polymers flow across various categories of application areas. So we have looked at both the polymer production, including the import in the polymer form, its application in the different packaging sector, in the various sectors, and then we look at the consumption of these different products, and then to what extent they are kind of released into or like kind of discarded, and after it is discarded, to what extent they end up reaching the recycling facilities, to what extent they are kind of reutilized, and the remaining that are mismanaged. So what we see the results, so this is for the year 2018-19, for which we had the complete set of data to capture the entire flow of polymers across the entire production consumption value chain. So we see that the total domestic production was estimated around 14 million tons, and this includes polyethylene, polypropylene, polyvinyl chloride, PET and BOPET, and polystyrene. And obviously, as can be seen, that the most consumer plastic polymer is the polyethylene, followed by PP and PVC. So the total mass of plastics in plastic containing products assembled and distributed into different applications was around 15 million tons. So domestically we are producing 14.2, and then we are also importing to some extent, which actually leads up to a higher volume of around 15 million tons. Wherein flexible packaging accounts for 42%, which is followed by the rigid packaging 17%, and application in the building and construction sector, the 14%. So this plastic products again is kind of distributed between the waste and stock depending on the sector and lifetime of a product. Now, this was quite challenging to understand that to what extent the product which are going into the economic system would be there in the system, to what extent the outflows would be arising because of the waste generated from the plastics that are produced in the same year, as well as the waste which have been like kind of been into the is generated because of the plastics which may have been introduced into the system in the previous years. So we had to take certain set of assumptions across various sectors to understand that what kind of like from which sector what kind of polymers would be coming out in the form of waste in the specific year from the previous years, as well as the one which have been produced and coming out from the production consumption value chain in the same year. So we see that a total of around 9 million tons of plastic waste was generated in 2018-19, and majority of which are kind of the packaging wastes, as can also be seen from the thickness of the line, and which is around 6.2 million tons of flexible packaging and 2.4 million tons of rigid packaging. So the thickness of these, the green as well as the red line is indicative of reflecting of these two different kind of values. And the additions to the stock were much higher in buildings and constructions, in buildings and construction, agriculture, household, and the automotive sector, which was totaling around 4.7 million tons. So, well, this is something which was an indicative in terms of to give a picture that where how the flows of polymers happen typically in an ecosystem, and from which sector it is coming out, which is the largest contributor, which is the least contributor. Secondly, which kind of short-lived and long-lived polymers are coming into the system, and finally, what is the fate of these different kind of materials coming out in the form of wastes, whether they're reaching the landfills, where they're being incinerated, or they are kind of mismanaged. So, given the complexity of the problem, particularly the problem it creates from the perspective of environmental degradation, so it warrants a transition to a circular economy for plastics, which is extremely relevant. So the opportunities and benefits are huge, spanning from the societal point of view, the environmental point of view, the economic, as well as the trade point of view, because in many cases we are importing it, and it is leading to a lot of outflow of foreign exchange reserves. So a circular economy can, in a way, divert dry waste from landfills, leading to cleaner environment, which will have much lesser emission, to the tune of 20 to 40%, less greenhouse emissions, improved air quality, and reduced microplastics in the food chains. Integrate the informal sector in the formal economy by recognizing their role, enabling the access to the services, particularly provided by the government, the benefits, and supporting them in developing their own relevant business models. So there is this local ecosystem which can be developed by leveraging their strong knowledge, know-how, and the local ecosystems of our waste generation and its composition is concerned. So it also provides an opportunity to have a cultural shift away from the traditional linear use and throw to one that leads to future generations to value resources, creating new secondary markets for used products in various sectors, including the construction, and more in terms of offering example to other emerging economies in the region, as well as in the other parts of the world, in terms of how we can actually uh, play a leading role in the entire transformative process. So securing the benefits of a circular economy within India's reach is possible if we all as a stakeholder come together and really work towards facilitating this transition. um, if Louis can, we can move to the next slide. Now, it's not that we have not been able to, or we haven't worked on those lines. Even if we look at some of the policy initiatives of the government over the last 6 7 years, particularly the plastic waste management rules that was announced in 2016, it talks about the imperative of extended producer responsibility, and it is the responsibility of the producers, the importers, the brand owners to ensure processing of their plastic waste through various means, including recycling or reuse or end of life disposal. So that's already there. And in order to streamline the process of the extended producer responsibility, in fact, as per the Fourth Amendment of the plastic waste handling rules, it talks about the guidelines on the extended producer responsibility for plastics packaging in the schedule 2 of the rules. And the guidelines in fact suggest that all the PIBOs have to have register themselves on a platform through a centralized portal which is already been developed by the Central Pollution Control Board. And at the same time, it talks about banning of a lot of these items. And and given the socio-economic and environmental diversity of the country, the framework in fact recognize that a single EPR model may not be feasible. So it is talking about three different types of EPRs, like a fee-based model, producer responsibility organized based model, and a plastics credit based model. Yeah. So next slide, please. Nonetheless, there are challenges. In fact, these challenges, although might be like classified under different heads, so the taxonomy will vary from literature to literature, but these are the broad issues that we felt would be very relevant in the context of understanding the challenges and the strategies that need to be designed to overcome them. So the first is the, I'm not saying that these are like kind of mutually exclusive, there might be some bit of an overlap, and one of the interventions may have like work as an enabler to facilitate some of the other key issues in the other two pillars. But largely, if we look at the circular business model, which is about doing more with less, it has 3 4 major issues linked to strong informality, the costs and the supply chain because of the fragmented value chain, poor level of awareness. And when we talk about awareness, it's largely the, I won't say awareness. I think awareness is there, but it is the ignorance which is more critical than simply talking about the awareness of the consumers or the stakeholders. And finally, the lack of scalable business models and the poor access to finance. The second one is the innovation and technology, which is about technology working as an enabler to support the circularity. So there we see lack of systematic material recovery facilities, although of late there are coming up, few of them coming up, but it's largely confined to one or two specific sectors, not in the plastics category. Absence of forums for technology options, so where we can have access to the technologies, wherein a typical investor or a agency can in fact invest on a specific technology, and how that technology can be like kind of adopted unless and until technology is already available to a entrepreneur who can deploy it by scaling it up. And finally, the data management, reporting, and the traceability perspective. Finally, on the policy and the behavior dimensions, we talk about knowledge and know-how barriers. What are the kind of knowledge that typically the end user or even the intermediate players need to have to ensure that they are able to responsibly behave, that caters to the to the basic tenets or the objectives of the plastic waste management rules. Motivations and the meanings. So what will motivate them to actually perform in that manner? Often they do out of like kind of sheer um, uh, behavior towards caring for the environment, but does that motivation also always work, or there will be different kind of motivation that needs to really be instigated through appropriate measures? And finally, the materials and the infrastructure. Yeah, so the next slide, please. So going forward, what we did was we identified a kind of 7 elements of India's circular economy principle for plastics. So as you can see, there are essentially like 7 elements into it: the inner shell and the outer shell. So the inner shell talks about the 3 broad stages of the production, consumption, and the recycling phase. And the external are the primary enablers that talk about the infrastructure, viability, awareness, readiness, and the consistent compliance. So all these elements would be extremely important in terms of moving towards that common objective of bringing circularity through or achieving waste management through plastic waste management through the circular economy way. So there is a need to have a clear roles defined, and symbiotic relationship is established across these different enablers, including the 3 broad stages through appropriate policies, industries, technologies, community, and social action. So we have to have a very clear understanding that how the different interventions are really able to establish the linkages across these 3, and then only we would be able to really talk about the transition towards a proper circular economy in the plastics sector. Next slide, please. So what in the next few slides, what I have done, kind of briefly presented this aspects, although the roadmap is kind of nearly ready, and hopefully in the next a month or so, we would be able to come out with this roadmap. I mean, it would be available to everybody. So as I mentioned, the first one is about the supportive infrastructure, and which is very important to the production consumption, but more importantly in terms of having an effective recycling. So the infrastructure not only talks about the physical infrastructure or hubs or clusters that will facilitate recycling and help bring secondary materials back into the value chain, but a digital backbone which would really help to track or flow the entire materials from the virgin to the application to the usage as well as secondary processing. But to that one, it is important to have a very robust and research and development ecosystem that look into those aspects of the connected or interconnectedness between the data and the digital part, as well as to what it in fact facilitates creation of clusters which can make use of the waste being generated locally so that it can be processed locally with minimum costs. When we talk about the effective recycling, it's all about the recycling capability. I'm not going into it, but I think what is, and the discussions are on in terms of how we can build appropriate sorting facilities, because one of the common problems that everybody talk about is that all plastics that come are like all mixed form. So can there be like kind of ways how we can do it in a more a cost effective manner, while the initial emphasis have been at the source segregation? But what in case if the source segregation doesn't happen? Should we completely ignore the role of artificial intelligence driven kind of segregation? Possibly not. So, and that's where we need to like kind of really push, apart from looking at the supply chain, which is presented in the final bullet of the effective recycling. Next slide, please. We talk about the consistent compliance, where the state governments, along with the state pollution control board, need to monitor the targets on the reduction. So we have proposed some reduction in terms of production and usage of certain category of plastics, which are in line with the plastics ban notified a few years ago, as well as the reuse and the recycling targets. Often the license, time to license and educate participants in the circular economy is critical. So a parallel emphasis and a continued emphasis should be undertaken. And it's good that the government of India has introduced life, and Dr. Bhattacharya has already mentioned what life is. So I think it is going to kind of reinforce the entire aspect of awareness and compliance, and bring in a kind of a sustainable and a continued transition towards orienting individual towards the larger goal. And in a way, I have already covered in a way the awareness and the readiness part. But yes, one thing I'm just going to like kind of mention here is the fact that, well, the awareness actually starts from the individual level, but at the institution level, which can play a very important role towards creating that awareness at a format in a very initial years, particularly in schools. I think that's happening, but possibly it can be scaled up and can be targeted in terms of how many schools have robust programs, how they're implementing, what are the outcome of such kind of an implementation in terms of reducing waste at the community level, at the school level, and finally at the city level. So and finally and then so far the sustainable consumption is concerned, so it is all to do with like what kind of materials are used in terms of making the various applications, and secondly what the consumers are going to reflect in terms of their practices so far the end of life disposal of the materials are concerned. So there we are talking about rejecting single use, low value and unnecessary packaging plastics. So they need to be very much linked with the awareness and the consistent compliance aspects. The aspect of 3 Rs obviously goes beyond any importance. Segregating waste streams after use and dispose obviously is very important. Working with the informal sector for efficient collection of waste materials, and I have already talked about how the life can be very proactive in terms of bringing the transition, including the second-hand market for many of the discarded items in the economy. I believe this would be my last slide. So obviously everything has to have a relevance when we see a commercial viability, either when we are bringing in secondary materials or we are talking about recycling, or even innovative materials that can substitute plastics. So I think for any other sectors, incentives have been a kind of a game changer, be it in the renewable energy space, be it in the automotive space. So the same sentiments echo here as well, wherein we need to have those incentives in place to bring that kind of transition before the consumers really considers that as a part and parcel of their consumption behavior. And finally, what we talk about is a collaboration, because still now we might be talking about a lot on bringing circularity in the plastics, but I think a lot of these happening in isolation. But I think the momentum is needed in terms of all the stakeholders coming together and working at relevant part of the production consumption value chain, and that's how we would be able to bring in the transition. And finally, we do have a few aspects that is very critical from the role of the agencies at the government level, wherein on one hand we look at Niti Aayog playing an important coordinator with the different ministries for streamlining the policy development. But at the same time, the Ministry of Environment and Forest and Climate Change and the Pollution Control Board need to have better manuals and codes to revolutionize plastic waste management and establish strong linkages with life. And obviously the Atmanirbhar Bharat, smart cities and Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, along with the Ministry of Urban Affairs, may implement many of these policies and codes as the ministries with the primary responsibility with their objectives. Finally, the standardization is extremely important. So we see the role of BIS, of the Ministry of Consumer Affairs, promoting the innovations in the technology in the circular economy business model that addresses gaps and the barriers towards this transition. So I would like to conclude here, and thank you so much for your attention, and would be more than happy to respond to any query or clarification that may be required. Thank you so much. Over to
Thank you,
you,
Shravik.
Pallavi.
Thank you for such an informative session. So, Shravik, I just like to add that there are many, initiatives that are taken in India. Like I'll just give an example of TCE, Tamil Nadu, one of the EIACP center. They gave us like they are working on the plastic, which they are using it for making roads. So they are helping government in this. So in some ways like people are doing their best, but yes, there is a lot of awareness which is needed. In Mission Life also, like we are trying to aware students and the community on waste. So we have organized last year also many of the awareness programs on waste itself. This year also we are planning. So this is like one of the very important aspect which is very much needed, and the awareness is needed. So thank you very much for such an informative session. So now we'll move to the next session, which is on reforming strategies for sustainable waste management through digitization, which will be like Mr. Saurabh Manuja is with us, waste management advisor, GIZ. So he is having around 17 years of work experience in the field of research, education, and consulting. He is currently working as a technical advisor at GIZ. He is an expert in solid waste management domain who did many first of its kind of projects ranging from development of digital portal for monitoring operation of material recovery, facility emission modeling from solid waste sector for the country, waste management audits and performance audits of mechanized road sweeping operations, on site waste characterization studies, formulation of work plans to reduce short-lived climate pollutants from waste management activities, and many more. So, Mr. Saurabh, this is over to you, but I'll just make a little, a small announcement. Whosoever has any questions, please put it in the chat box so that we can take all the questions after this session. So, over to you, Saurabh.
Thanks, Pallavi. And I literally want to thank Shavik for making my work very easy. You were talking about the key issues like data management, reporting, traceability, systematic MRFs, knowledge and know-how. And I saw your one of the key elements of circular economy was talking about supportive infrastructure like digital backbone. I'll be talking a bit about that in my presentation. Thanks for making that background. I'm sharing my screen. Rita, Palvi, is my screen visible?
Yes, yes, it's visible.
Okay.
Just make it in a slideshow mode. Yeah. Yes.
Visible on a full screen,
Yes,
right?
yes, yes.
Okay. So I'll be talking about the reforming strategies for sustainable waste management. Although Shavik had already talked about plastics, how different type of plastics are getting consumed, how their trend has been, and over the last 2 decades, it was really nice to see the analysis that showed that over the last 2 decades, only 56% was getting produced. To so I'll be talking much about what are the key issues with waste management, what are possible ideal scenarios, and what has come up. I'm talking about digitization. I'll be talking about a tool that Mahua has come up with. Just taking you to the next slide. So if we look at sustainable waste management, so I was looking at how to define sustainable waste management. I found this very interesting definition that says that waste management incorporating feedback loops. So whatever we do, like we take feedback, we improvise on it, we again validate it, we again improvise upon it. Focuses on processes. It has like embodied adaptabilities. That means it's open for change, and diverse wastes from disposal. So earlier 2000 rule of waste management very clearly said cities like you did collect and dispose. But now the rule 2016 very clearly says that you can't dispose anything which is organic or which has a value or which can be recycled or processed. So making it very clear that sustainable waste management is something which is in line with 2016 solid waste management rules and is in line with what the country needs as of now. SBM has also been talking about garbage-free cities, getting landfill remediated and also getting rid of all the disposal facilities. So there are two challenges. When we talk about waste management, there are two challenges which are not only local, these are on a global scale. First is marine litter. And if we talk about marine litter, it is mostly associated with plastics. Second issue is global warming, which is mostly associated with disposal of waste onto landfills. Although 2016 rules have now indicated that no organics shall go to the landfills, but yes, there have been small cities, towns, as well as legacy waste lying on the dump sites, which do create methane emissions from the disposal sites. Dr. Bhattacharya was already talking about this when he said methane will be 25% more potential greenhouse gas compared to carbon dioxide if we dispose it. The challenge is we in India have somewhere close to 1.3 billion population. Now it is 1.3 somewhere. They say 1.3 plus in 2021. But the geographical area of our country is only 2.4% of world's land area. Like if we look at the figure, like we have somewhere around 1/6 of the population, but we have only 2.4% of the land area. And that is how we create, like this is one of the key issues because we are densely populated. We have a lot of urban areas, almost we are going to touch in few years, we'll be going to touch like 50% urbanized areas and the challenges will remain. Looking at plastic consumption, I'll not go much in detail. Shobhik has already talked about it. We consume somewhere around 13.6 kilograms per year of plastics. And it is supposed that we are recycling 60 to 70% in India. These are estimates, and this indicated that somewhere around, so some CPCB reports also indicated that 26,000 tons of waste is getting of plastic waste is getting generated every day. Roughly we generate somewhere close to 1,50,000 tons of municipal solid waste a year. This is somewhere around 7% of it. But the issue is 2 of the 10 most plastic carrying rivers, plastic load carrying rivers, Ganga and Brahmaputra, are lying in India. That clearly indicates that maybe we are consuming less plastics compared to the developed world, which is 28 per capita, but yet due to population, due to density, we are at a worst where we are generating a lot of plastic waste. It is estimated that around 11 million tons of plastics is entering oceans every year, although 150 million tons is already there in oceans. The issue is that plastics coming in, the long time that the plastics takes to degrade or to break down is what creates an issue. It remains there in oceans, it gets accumulated. The challenges have been like almost like 1 million seabirds, 1 lakh marine mammals, whales, dolphins were found dead every year. And plastic creates issues with respect to ingestion and entanglement of these marine mammals and animals. But from where is this plastics coming in? Some reports suggest that almost 75 to 80% of this plastic come from land-based sources. That means cities where plastic waste is generated are at the front set, like they are the ones in the front line generating plastic waste. Through cities, via drains, through rivers, this plastic waste enter into oceans and create issues with respect to marine litter. You can see one of the site. So this photograph is being taken from one of our sites in Kanpur, where, and this is a very common sight in the small cities, in all across all mostly small cities, where we see that a lot of waste is getting accumulated at one of the corners of the road, if there are no appropriate waste management systems, and somehow it is getting disposed into drains. By the time it gets picked up, it's too late. A lot of it goes back into the drains, and if it is entering into drains, that means it will lead into rivers and the oceans. So Ocean Conservancy in 2020 indicated that the leakages that come from land-based activities, about three-fourths is due to uncollected waste. Thus, it is very clear that we need to target and help cities manage this waste appropriately. This is where we came up with, and it was very clear that it is the cities whose waste management is to be appropriately managed. With respect to greenhouse gas emissions, the sector like solid waste disposal contributes somewhere close to 1% of the total emissions of the country. In 2018, the report said that we are generating somewhere around 15,000 gigagram carbon dioxide equivalent emissions, although this number is certainly expected to go high. Of this, roughly, so this is a figure of only solid waste disposal. If we look at the waste sector, which comprised of wastewater and solid waste, this was somewhere close to 4% of total country's emissions. And solid waste was roughly like 1/4 of this. What is the ideal scenario? If we look at waste from our homes, from our cities, how is that managed? So if we look at it ideally, waste that is getting generated from a household, the organic waste should be composted. Whatever organics or whomsoever cannot compost it at home, will give it to a ULB, urban local body. So whatever is wet will go either for composting or anaerobic digestion. Whatever has been domestic hazardous waste or sanitary waste will be linked up with biomedical facility or treatment storage and disposal facility by the ULB. And if there is a dry waste that has been handled to the urban local body, it will go to a material recovery facility where you will segregate, like the MRF operators will be segregating paper, plastic, glass, metal, MLPs, everything, and putting it back to recycling industries. Whatever can't be recycled will be going for energy recovery. That's an ideal scenario. But before this, a city has to look at the waste management hierarchy. This is also something which has promptly come up under the LIFE program, whereby ministry is calling it as RRR program, Reduce, Reuse and Recycle program. So that is the waste management hierarchy, and these are the top priorities under the waste management strategy. A city should look at reducing its waste. It should look at reusing whatever it has used, and thereafter should put back everything to recycling loops. If something can't be reused or recycled, should be sent for energy recovery, and only rejects from the processing facilities should be going out to disposal. But if we have today MRFs, so in our country, we have somewhere around close to 1,500 to 2,000 MRFs across cities. But there are certain issues, there are certain questions to which we could not find an answer. Like, for example, how much quantity of dry waste is available at cities MRF? There is no platform to know this. Cities do report their data on Swachhatam portal, which is a MIS by Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs under SBM cell. But what is lying there, what is available by the city for recycling, nobody knows. What amount of waste was sent out for recycling? What amount was sent for energy recovery or was actually disposed, not sent out anywhere? And what is available for recycling from our cities is also something cities don't mention on an online platform. What categories of waste are not collected? Like Shobik very clearly informed us, all the type of plastics. So we also did some analysis and found that there are 11, 12 type of plastics that you can find at city MRFs. But what type of plastics a city is not handling? For example, polystyrene is not getting handled in some of the small MRFs. If that is the case, how will a city manager know that? Nobody knows the answer. So there could have been a possible solution. So there is a possible approach to get it done. The possible approach is, so looking at waste management scenarios, since we identified that marine litter was related to hotspots in cities, and hotspots are the problematic areas in the front line to link waste with marine environment. So the strategy should be like identify hotspots in your cities, improvise waste management around the hotspots. Start with the hotspots, improvise waste management on the back way in the city areas, wards, or zones. Thereafter, strengthen your linkages. So, whenever you will improvise your hotspots, like improvise waste management across those zones, you will be starting collecting segregated waste. Now, definitely the city will be taking segregated waste to the material recovery facilities. Now, what? The material recovery facilities can only operate efficiently if they have appropriate linkages. So those linkages are to be established. The collected materials have to be processed. The materials have to be sorted in a way that are required by the recyclers. And over and above, all these things have to be monitored. And for monitoring, you need a digital platform to do that. A glimpse from one of our studies you see on your right is one of the maps of Kochi, and the red ones are the hotspots. So we could identify certain hotspots in the city from where leakages were happening into the marine environment, and thereafter the project has been working to improvise waste management across these hotspots. So a digital platform that can help monitor, make materials available for recyclers can be a solution. So it is not only about managing or monitoring what is happening in MRF, what is coming in, what is going out, but also helping those MRFs identify recyclers, or vice versa. Recyclers identify the materials lying in MRFs for sale or for available for recycling. So digital solutions definitely are the solution uh, for sustainable waste management. Digitization has power of replicability. You create a solution for one city, you can quickly replicate around 4,800 cities. It has the power to be uniform and transparent. So all the issues that Shobik was highlighting, like systematic MRFs, reporting, traceability, all these can be sorted through digital means. And of course, he also gave this that digital backbone is needed. So McKinsey also said in one of its statement that by digitizing processes, making organizational changes, governments can really enhance services, save money, and improve citizens' quality of life. There has been a regulatory background for digital portal. Mahua has come up with a digital portal, Sansadhan. I'll show you that. Solid Waste Management Rules 2016 clearly indicated that it is a duty and responsibility of local authorities and village panchayat of census towns and urban agglomerations to set up MRFs or secondary storage facilities with sufficient space for sorting and recycling materials. Now, what issue came up was, what is happening at those MRFs? Nobody knew. So establishing a further need to monitor flow of materials and performance in cities is what is need of the hour. So looking at the solution, there has been a project where I'm working with cities combating plastic entering marine environment. It's a GIZ program under a technical cooperation agreement with Government of India, whereby Government of India is getting supported. There are like three states, Kerala, Andamans, and Uttar Pradesh, that are getting supported. Those are the partner states, with three of their cities, Kanpur, Kochi, and Port Blair, getting supported. So the project basically implements certain things at ground in the three cities. These are the pilots that are being done. There are certain experiments getting done over there. All these learnings from the pilots are taken up for capacity development at the state level for replication across the state. And over there, these are taken up to the national level again for wider dissemination along different states. At national level, there also has been a national digital platform getting developed, which passes from national level back to the cities and MRFs. Project support area. The objective of the project has been to have enhanced practices, including digital tools to prevent plastics. So the focus may talk about plastics, but the focus of the project has been all dry waste. And one of the outcomes is that Mahua applies data of National Digital Monitoring Platform to compare state level recycling and reuse rates of plastics. There was a background study that was done in 2021. More than 85 plus consultations were held with certain ULBs, recycling associations, traders, small recyclers, medium recyclers, and we came up with like 52 subcategories of waste with different requirement for different color, packaging, and conditions. There have been pilot tests done with 6 MRFs at the end of 2021. Waste characterizations were thereafter done in 2022, and we did these characterizations in Kanpur and Port Blair, one of both our cities, to identify what is it that we get, and we came up with more subcategories of waste. Overall, now we have 68. So we came up with a digital platform through an IT agency thereafter, and the portal has now been live, and portal is now hosted on Mahua's server. You can easily go through this portal. It's sansadhan.sbmurban.org. You'll have to put the whole name, https asterisk slash slash um, sansadhan.sbmurban.org, and it can easily be also seen through your mobile interfaces. What this portal does is, this portal basically allows MRFs to feed data. So material recovery facility in a city feeds data on what is happening in their MRFs every day, like how much of waste was received, how much of processing was done, what is it that is available for stock, what is it that was sent out. I'll come to that, what I mean by sent out. This Sansadhan portal integrates the existing Swachhatam portal. Swachhatam portal is a monthly MIS system that exists. This Sansadhan portal is designed in a way that it will push data through APIs to Swachhatam portal at the end of the month. So cities data can be collaboratively pushed to Sansadhan portal without any difficulties. It is an opportunity for cities to showcase performance. So whenever a state logs in, state can truly see like how different cities in a state are performing. The comparisons can be done. Comparisons can be based on like available stocks, based on recycling, based on different materials. It is an interface between city MRFs and recycling companies as well. Not only the government is monitoring what is happening in MRFs and cities, but whatever is available from MRFs can be seen by a recycling company who signs up. So if I'm a recycler, I signs up into the portal. I want to look where is PET available. This portal allows me to look at all the available stocks of PET in different states. I can go in a particular state of my interest, go into the city of my interest, get in touch with the MRF which has the stock. So I can have that. I can even chat with the MRF guy over there. Not only that, the portal also allows a city to issue a thank you certificate to a recycler who has traded with a city MRF in a way that the certificate is traceable and in future can even be helpful under EPR to find a linkage that a transaction has happened in a city MRF via this trader or recycler. It also allows rigorous monitoring, tracking, and helps take informed decisions. So here you see all the 68 subcategories of waste that are there. Like there are 14 type of plastics, 9 type of paper and cardboards, 8 metals, 5 glasses. Likewise, there are 68. We even had coconut shells, organic compost, and banana stem and leaves onto this portal because there were certain portions of the country where Organic compost is also available through SLRM centers, and there are buyers for that as well. So this is one of the portals that are designed for MRFs as well as SLRM centers. Now, when I'm saying what goes out, question is where it goes out. A material from MRF can either be available for recycling, or it can go out for recycling, or like it's already sold, gone out, or it may be sent for energy recovery, or it may have been sent to PWDs or other department for use in road construction. Like Pallavi was just giving an example of a TCE campus which had road made from plastics. Likewise, city can have utilized that plastic for road construction or other material for other purposes. Or the material could not have even found a use, or might have been rejected and would have gone out for disposal. So all these elements are getting tracked onto the portal. I'll just show you a glimpse. What you see is like an MRF. It shows that what is the status of sorted material as an output. The chart over here shows you what is available stock. In orange, you see what was sent out for energy recovery. In dark blue, you see what is the disposal of, like what is sent out for disposal to landfill or self-utilized. Then in blue, what is sent for recycling. In light orange, what is like sent for use in road construction. Now, if I click on any of the pie chart elements, what I see is like state, like this is the dummy data that you see, like state UP, urban level Kanpur, test MRF, and you see different type of material. So there are broadly 17 categories of material and 68 subcategories. So you see that that what is happening to plastic, what is happening to the other materials, what is happening to e-waste and all, and different 17 categories. You see the so I've hidden available for, so you can switch on and off different legends and look at the trends. So this is just for a city or a state to, or even an MRF to understand what is going on into the MRF. If I look at like a particular material, like for example, I click on plastics, it will show me what is the trend of different type of plastics. That like now you see like all different 14 type of plastics and what is happening over there to that. So this is the trend of a particular year that you see on your screen. Like for example, you can see like you can see the light green like available in stock as PET. So there is PET that is available in stock in this particular MRF. And not only that, if we want to look at what has been the trend throughout the year for different materials, here is the screen that you see. What is the quantity that was sent out for recycling? Like for example, now you can see different tonnage of different type of materials till May that were sent out for recycling. Obviously, if we want to look at subcategories, the buttons down there can be clicked and we can see the submaterials. I'm sorry, you will not have an access to all the data over here, but which I am showing here, because the system is only for MRFs, cities, states, and national level. But this shows a broader category. The microsite shows broadly what is happening in the states. There are different user groups: national user, state user, ULB, and MRF users, as well as company users. National level only monitors, helps the states to identify strategies. Similarly, states only monitor their particular states, help ULBs in identifying strategies, take informed decisions. At a ULB level, ULB monitors performance, identifies materials that have weak market linkages or are in stocks for long, or certain materials which are not even handled by MRFs. They also verify documents, issue thank you certificates based on the invoices and purchase orders by recycler and the MRF operators. Whereas the key player over here is the MRF operator guy. He feeds data on a daily basis. So the frequency of having data is on a daily basis. Although the website has now currently being open for 2 weeks, like for you can enter data for last 14th day from now onwards. They also, the MRF guy is also the one who will respond to the inquiry and can upload invoices. Over here, one more thing is company. Company signs up, identifies what all materials they deal in, and thereafter, once they have ticked what all they deal with, cities and state can identify companies under their jurisdiction. They can also identify companies based on the materials they want. Like for example, if I want to search, I'm a city user, I want to search company dealing with plastics. So I will just have to search plastics and it will show me the names, contact details of the companies who signed up and have been dealing with plastics. So the portal has certain benefits. For MRFs, daily records of inflow, processing, and outputs, graphs are obtained, figures and performances are seen. Recyclers and traders can be linked. For ULBs, all the data. So, for example, look at a city like Ambikapur, which has 18 MRFs. And imagine if a city administrator is getting data in different formats. And now with this, all data gets collaborated at a single page, and you can see the performance of all MRFs cumulatively, as well as if you want to see the performance of a particular one MRF with the same format, you will get the prints for all the data. So the performances can be accessed, are accessible. Comparisons can be made between one ULB and other ULB. So I'm in Kanpur. I can compare myself with Andaman's Port Blair. It helps and it guides and assists MRFs to increase their performances, establish material linkages. Even if I'm a city user, I can look like if the other accompanying state with a certain city is doing well in certain materials. I can even connect with them, identify if they had some recyclers for certain materials and all. So this is how like informed decisions can be taken. EPR possible linkages are also there with a thank you certificate. States basically oversee performance of their cities and MRFs, as well as companies basically can sign up and locate for materials countrywide. So if I'm suppose I'm a jute manufacturer, I want to look for coconuts, and I can look at coconuts lying across the country. Currently, the portal is live for 8 cities. It is in a pilot stage, although it is live on Mawa's server, but it is open for 8 cities currently, and soon the portal will be made declared as open platform for all the cities and states. It will be launched very soon. So the time is here for basically turning from Flintstones to Jetsons. Thank you so much, and I'll be happy to answer any questions if there are.
Thank you, Saurabh. Thank you for giving us such an enlightenment presentation. So, there are few questions in the chat box. Uh, the first thing that the port is the data in the portal real time. You already told me that how often it gets updated. So it is not available for all the cities. It will be soon be available for the cities. So how often it gets updated? Can you please, yeah.
Yeah, so Pallavi, thanks for that question. The portal is designed in a way that it gets data every day. MRF has to post data for every day, but since it just started, we have allowed it to allowed MRF to enter data till last 15 days. Like for example, it's 24th today, and if MRF wants to feed data of 9th May, he can do that till end of the day.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Saurabh. There is one more question that how an MSc environmental science student make their career in this field?
So it hardly matters if you are an MSc or an MTech. The point is, if you want to enter into waste management, you will have to understand it and start somewhere. Start with an internship, Maybe Pallavi and Rita can help you.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. Actually, I'm also about to say that waste is something that we are seeing in everyday life, and the waste is available in our household also. In the, if we'll go some outside, we can see the waste. So it is something that we are dealing with in our daily lives. So one of the like case study I also remembered that in Kanpur, that you're talking about Kanpur. So there is one case study that two of the youth, I guess Ankit Agarwal and Karan Rastogi, who founded Help Us Green. Right. So what they did that in the Ganga, when the people put flowers into the river Ganga, so they took it as an initiative that we have to save Ganga, and they took those flowers each and every day. And there are the women who are like maybe prostitutes, and the women who are like who need help. So they engage those women in that in their foundation, and they prepare agarbatti out of it. So see how they are using that waste in a livelihood
Now,
generation also.
now it's a big brand name, Fool.
Yeah, it's now branded as Fool. So it started from a very, like in a very small scale, and now they have a big brand. So it is just an initiative that you have to take, and you have to see what are the opportunities available in your nearby, right, Saurabh? If I
Yes,
am, yeah, please
yeah.
correct me. Yeah.
Plus, I
So,
want to add here, yeah, there is a startup called Daily Dump, which recently has also appeared in Shark Tank of India. So they are also using this waste material, and they are producing some new products from them. So they are not MSc in environmental science. Yes, it's the individual's inner urge or the initiatives which take them forward in this field.
yes. So, with this, I'll just take forward this session, and I'll just request Miss Reeta Sharma to kindly sum up this webinar. Yeah, over to you, ma'am. Yeah.
Thank you, Pallavi. It's not possible to summarize such an informative and wonderful webinar. I can only thanks each speakers for their contribution to making this webinar a successful webinar, because we have received, offer from some of the, they requested us that can this webinar be organized with them, because the topic chosen is in itself is such an innovative topic, like how waste management, sustainable waste management can be achieved through circular economy. So some of the organizations approached us that can we organize this webinar with them, again with the same set of speakers and with the same topic. So we can see the power of such kind of topic and how the people are getting aware about this topic. So with this, I can only thank our distinguished speaker, Dr. PK Bhattacharya, for talking about the MissionLiFE and explaining how individual can contribute to achieve the MissionLiFE aims and its objectives. Then our speaker, Dr. Shobhit Bhattacharya ji, explaining about the impact of plastics and how much waste is coming from which source, and what are the various key issues and the related channels in managing waste management, and how these can be achieved through circular business model, innovations and technology and policies and behavior. And then our speakers, Saurabh, who has explained the possible approach to manage waste through digitizations, and explaining the power of digitization in waste management, and also explaining us the digital portal Sansadhan in a very well and manner, and in a detailed manner basically. So thank you all the speakers for joining us today's webinar, and all the participants who patiently listen all the speakers, and they have joined in fact half an hour before the webinar started at 3, but they have joined at 2:30, and I can see that most of the participants are in this meeting from 2:30 to 4:30. Hardly there are one or two participants who left in between. So thank you all the participants for joining today's webinar, and all the distinguished speakers, and the last thanks Pallavi, Naseem, Shesh, Ritu, and other team members for making this webinar wonderful. I request all the speakers to please switch on their cameras so our team can take a photograph. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Saurabh.
Thank you.
Thank you, Saurabh, Souvik, Dr. Bhattacharya, sir.